I would like to ask you all a question. What do these characters Mario, Sonic, Pac-Man, and Pikachu have in common? Of course, they are all iconic characters from video games, but none of their respective games play anything alike. They don't even look the same, and yet they have a similarity. That being their character design, mostly the functions of their design. Recognizable or popular characters mainly do not share looks, but they all share and keep key elements of their designs that perfectly fit the scene they are placed in. With that said, I want to share with you the process of picking a character. First, consider your audience. Next, consider how the character will be used. And lastly, the three-letter idea, KIS. Keep it simple. Often, people looking to get into this field wonder what key aspects go into making a good character. People have also come to me and asked how I create such likable characters. While I can't give any bias, I can give some basic information to the process. So let's get started. The first thing to consider when making a character is to consider the audience that will receive the character. Things to consider would be subjects like what is the age group of your target audience, say children, teenagers, or adults. You should also consider if your target audience is foreign and how will the audience react to your character. Once you have figured out the target audience, try to place yourself in that position and think about how you would react. For example, when the association ACM SIGGRAPH held a contest for character creation, they left this tip. Younger viewers tend to respond best to simpler shapes and colors, while more mature audiences can better process more complex visuals. Another thing to consider with your audience is the personality of your character. Looking back to Mario, he always seems to have a cheerful, happy, and friendly demeanor. This is fitting since his target audience is mostly directed towards younger viewers. When thinking about your character's traits and personality, the audience you're targeting plays a huge role in that decision. Finally, when considering your audience, think of how relatable your character is. When audiences can connect with the character, feel what the character is feeling, often that character is sympathized with and more loved. This can be seen with Marvel superheroes, given the fact most of them are human, therefore feel and do what any other human would do in their situation. Granted, if you aren't aiming for that, your character doesn't necessarily need to be relatable. They could be made purely to entertain, and entertaining your audience is equally important. Moving away from people's personal feelings, it is also important to consider how your character is used. When thinking of how your character is used, an important aspect to consider is the setting your character is in. A happy setting with beautiful green scenery, happy music, and birds chirping. A gruff, mature character doesn't seem to fit in that world. By thinking of the world your character will be in, you can appropriately design that character to fit in. Another aspect to consider is the character's proportions. Some important questions to consider are what dimensions do they have? What motions can they do and how can they do so? Another tip that ACM SIGGRAPH gave to contestants for their competition was, in a 2D world, you have the freedom to defy realness and have your character twist and bend in ways no human is physically capable. In a 3D world, however, you'd probably be grounded in a realistic physical world. So, in other words, the actions of a character does in a realistic 3D world or a cartoony 2D world would have to be believable or properly explained to work. Lastly, like the setting, it's also important to think of the story your character is in. Your character doesn't just need to fit the scenery, they should also align with the story they're given. Some liberties could be made, like with how Mario, the plumber, defeats a dragon-esque hurdle to save a princess. But something like a child being an indestructible hero in our world doesn't really make sense. So when your character is used accordingly and fits the setting, story, and proportion is given, you'll have a solid idea of creating your character. And now that all the thinking's out of the way, now comes the creation bit. The most important thing when designing your character is to remember this 3-letter idea, KIS, keep it simple. Again, a tip that ACM SIGGRAPH gave their contestants was, there is no need to design an over-intricate character with hundreds of moving parts. There is a catch to this though, that being it is unnecessary unless it is the focus of the character's design. For example, if your character is a model, fashion-centered, or is a pop star, like this character, then an over-the-top design with matching colors that are easy on the eyes could work. Speaking of colors, those should be kept simple as well. According to an article on character design by Masterclass, a character's color scheme can also help illustrate personality. So by choosing certain colors to demonstrate a trait, like red for passion, then the character's meanings and design and purpose will make sense. Take a look at this character. It's a lot to take in, right? He's a character design you would want to avoid. With mismatching colors, green hair, and headphones, you might think he is a singer, model, or someone with a proud and fun personality. But he actually has none of these traits. In fact, he is serious, reserved, like a lone wolf kind of guy. This makes the design very confusing, questionable, and in general makes no sense. The last thing to consider to keep a character simple is to have a focal point for your character. The best thing to get a good idea of your character's design is a major feature they revolve around. If it is strength or power, then the character could be tall or have muscles. If the character is a comedian, then funny aspects like a goofy appearance or a humorous attitude is what the character could have. Having a focal point that centralizes the main idea of a character, along with keeping it simple, will help tremendously in designing your character. Altogether, these are the most important tips to create a good character design. First, consider the audience receiving your character. Next, know how your character will be used. And finally, keep it simple. By taking all these steps, think about how you can create a whole identity. Express your creative side, but be logical about it. But hey, if you want to show out like no one else, then let your freak flag fly. Thank you for listening.